Hello and welcome to another episode of To Boldly Watch,
the Star Trek
Rewatch podcast.
I was the echo.
Was that the computer telling us?
Yeah.
Is that what that was? That sounded like the computer.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Let's do our best computer voice.
I wish I knew anyone who was doing computer. Anyway.
You don't know Marjorie Roddenberry? Is that, no, that wasn't her name.
Oh no, I'm blanking on her name.
Majel
Barrett.
Majel Barrett.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Marjorie Roddenberry, Majel Barrett, same
Lexana
person.
Troy.
Lexana Troy.
You know that, Becca, right? That's the same actor.
Yeah,
You
I know.
Okay.
She dyed her hair blonde in the first
Yes, for Nurse Chapel.
original
Yes. Oh
series.
yeah, that's true.
You're welcome. I have those
There was the
lore
whole
facts.
that whole thing of like it was Gene Roddenberry's wife who was cast as number 1 in the pilot, and they as a brunette, and they're like, we don't want that lead female character, so she dyed her hair blonde and cast her as the nurse, and they never questioned it.
Women aren't leads, don't you understand? They're more comfortable in the kitchen and child rearing.
I was torn between figuring out if it was like a sexism thing or even just the nepotism thing of Roddenberry trying to shoehorn in his wife to be the lead in his show. Probably
a little
both.
bit of
How else
both.
are women going to get ahead aside from sleeping their way there? Huh, Jake? It's how we got our first female vice president.
Okay,
Oh wow.
It's a joke. It's not true. It's bullshit. But that is what Facebook will do to the world.
What? You just started a rumor on this podcast and said this is what Facebook's doing.
No, there's a whole story.
I was
It's the whole
terrified you
thing.
were going to say that's how we started this podcast. It's like, I didn't sleep with anybody to start this podcast. Did you?
No,
Bad news.
Kamala Harris
Xander, no!
has held her back. Oh, yeah, Xander did sleep his way into this
Yeah.
podcast. Who do you sleep with? Oshi?
Doesn't matter. Wait, no, that does matter. No,
That does
not the
matter.
dog.
It's okay. I make out with him every day. Should we start this episode
This
over?
got
or-
weird.
Yeah, I wish we could go back in time and start this episode and make some decisions that are different.
Yeah.
Kill the past version of us that made these weird jokes.
It's based on like completely false articles written about the vice president elect.
Oh, I see.
the-
We're still there.
We're still on
Poor
that.
taste joke.
Got it.
Y'all didn't know.
Wait, hold on. Are there really rumors that that's the why she has
So
ascended where she
dated
is?
someone in California government, and it actually hindered one of her earlier campaigns because he
Mhm.
like it looked bad on her that her ex was also in government, and then that has been escalating, and like that's why she made it in the Senate, sleeping with this guy, and like totally bullshit. That actually hurt her career. But
The things
of
that
course,
women
women can't
politicians have to like
merit.
push through to get like half as far as men do is insane. Like,
Feminist.
the wormholes that captains have to travel through just to go back in time and save their ship, though, is also insane.
Oh
Mhm.
my God! Tell me about it.
That's
What does
right,
the captain have
it's-
to do?
Time squared, where the Enterprise discovers a duplicate of Picard from 6 hours in the future.
Oh no, wait! I thought it was they go back to New York, and what did I watch?
Xander, you weren't here when Becca asked me this exact same thing, but she said I thought this was going to be like a Times Square episode. Times Square episode.
Well, there's a future episode pitch for you. No, this one is a whole new set. We have a shuttlecraft bay that is ginormous,
Oh,
a beautiful soundstage, and then the sick bay looks completely different as well. A whole new carpeted walls.
Hold
Oh,
on.
I
think
didn't notice.
This is an alternate Becca. This is we've had the shuttle bay before, and I don't think is the sick bay different?
Call back. You're gaslighting me.
no.
It's totally different.
Is it? I didn't notice,
I didn't notice that either.
but maybe you're seeing it from a different perspective. So I don't
Okay,
know.
well, we've
woman's
never
perspective.
seen Shuttle
No.
Bay 2 before. Can we agree on this timeline?
I mean, we've seen
We've seen a shuttle
bay, which is just the same shuttle bay with different numbers on the wall. But yeah,
But I
we
think
have.
This one may have gotten more detailed because you saw the thing on the floor that said like stand back from the tractor beam.
Do you remember Code of Honor when the alien community the alien community came up and like they were like getting staged with all their animals and stuff inside like a shuttle bay?
It was just full of stuff.
And there was like that containment unit when they had the alien virus on that was the containment was degrading, and that was in like a shuttle blade too.
Maybe we haven't seen it empty.
We haven't seen this set empty before, and I thought it was a whole new room. Maybe it's like their engineering room because they did have a room that big before. It just really sent me for a time loop, you know?
A loop? Yeah! Put you in a Mobius loop. Well, so let's set this up. The Enterprise is out for a cruise, and they... Oh my gosh, wait a minute.
No, cold open.
Episode, what is this scene? What is going on?
If I were on a starship, I would make people eat my weird cooking all the time. I'm just telling you, there's free time.
Of all the dishes to have a personal flair, omelets? This is something the replicator can't do, is an omelet?
It tastes one of the replicated, you know.
Yeah, the replicator can't put peppers and onions in it. Like, what is Riker doing that the replicator can't do? Like, of all
maybe they've realized that eggs are an inefficient use of water because 53 gallons of water are used to produce one egg. That's what I heard on a different podcast advertisement.
But that's true if you grow the chicken, feed the chicken, and have the chicken produce the egg. But when you can replicate it, it's not like it doesn't have to use 54 gallons of replicated water. Although, if that's how the technology evolved, that'd be pretty hilarious.
Yeah, but what came first, the chicken or the replicator?
A chicken came before the replicator. I think.
What came first, the replicator or the egg?
That still hasn't been decided, much like the theorem from last episode.
Well, and then wasn't it that there were specific eggs that they had gotten somewhere? I didn't write it down, but it was like they were like, "Where'd you get this egg?" And he was like, "It was from something, right?"
The farmer's market on Omicron Persei 8.
On chicken Persei 8. I don't know. I didn't hear that part. I heard that Pulaski brought some really fancy ale, which of course you always pair ale with an omelet, right?
Yeah, it's called the morning, Jake.
This scene was like, what is going on? I understand they want to show that like there's a human touch to living on this ship, but having a bunch of people eat omelets and have Data like look around. Also, does Data have a digestive tract?
Yes.
What? Of course he does.
Yeah.
So does he break down the food?
Yes, it is.
And then the calories become energy?
Energy source.
Look, I had a Barbie that did that.
You had a Barbie that would eat food and poop it out?
Yeah.
Or not poop it out? Because that's the thing. Does he have an end to his digestive tract, or does he just convert all things to energy?
Here on Taboli Watch, we ask the important questions.
I don't know.
Data take shits.
Does he?
That's where the off button is.
If you could just press
what doll did you have, Becca? I'm so curious. This doll ate things?
Baby born. I don't know. There was all these lifelike babies. This idea of replicating play for children so that it just exactly creates normal life, and they don't need to use their imagination to make their doll
they
shit.
Have to use their imagination. It's not a real baby.
But for this, I think the gag is that Riker messed it up because it tastes bad. Everybody looks at each other because it tastes bad, but Worf is scarfing it up, and Worf is the one that says it's delicious because he's a Klingon.
Okay,
Klingon food.
Sure. Great use of our time in a time travel episode. It's like, okay, here was my thought. It's like, if we're going on a time loop, let's have them sit through this a couple times. Or like, maybe it gets better. Maybe because of the actions of Picard. I don't know. Like, that was so disconnected from everything, and we never returned to it once.
Sometimes I feel like the cold opens are like that, though. They're kind of like a glimpse into the ship outside of the episode. Because all of the episodes are very, like, the plot starts going and then it's full steam ahead, or A and B plot, whatever. But with these, you get like a kind of glimpse into the everyday life.
That's true. Like when Picard was fencing with that other officer the first time before an episode that had nothing to do with fencing. I get that, for sure. This just seemed to have nothing to it.
Yeah. Well, we learned a little bit about Riker growing up without his mom.
That's true.
And him and his dad were on their own, and it made me very sad that his eggs weren't good. I feel like story-wise, it would have been better if they'd been good, but it's not really a button to a scene. You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't Data saying, "Oh, wait, I don't have a digestive system. Go to the
Let
ship."
me shit.
It's not only not a button to a scene, it's not a reason to have a scene.
It might be exactly, now that you bring that up, Becca, it might be to flesh out Riker a bit more for some backstory, and that was just the way they shoehorned it in.
Yeah, but in my mind, he's a perfect male specimen, and therefore him not being able to make good eggs is a real letdown.
So the priority in the writers' room was to be like, we need to get a little bit of Riker backstory. What's our vehicle? How about
what else do
omelets?
You have? You could have a fight, I guess.
Well, as much as I could talk about omelets for
2 more hours on this.
We should probably get to the point of this episode, which when I wrote an email to both of you telling you what episodes we were going to record today, I wrote in parentheses, I remember this being a good one. And I do distinctly remember this episode from my childhood because I remember like Picard having to deal with another Picard and one of them having like a mission that he couldn't quite explain to the other in full. And that happens, but it happens in the last 4 minutes of the episode. Like we have a time paradox.
Many episodes do.
I know. I wanted to live in this time paradox a few times over and over and have different options, right? But we kind of sit wondering what's going on for like a good 45 minutes.
Yeah, but I really liked that. Normally, no, it's inactive. But this episode, especially the middle of it, was particularly intriguing to me. I felt like the questions being posed were really interesting ones, and the suspense felt very real, and the stakes felt very real. I was disappointed in the end not having a complete conclusion for what exactly this time hole was. We never meet it, even though it's referred to as an entity with a consciousness.
Yeah, it seems to have sentience of some sort, right?
Right.
Yeah, we never find out a why.
Yeah. But I mean, the first note that I have is just Patrick Stewart is so good because it's so believable.
You know what was crazy to me? I was like,
the other guy was terrible at acting.
The other guy.
I didn't know.
I also wrote the same thing, Xander. I want to see Patrick Stewart acting against Patrick Stewart more. Like those generally when you film scenes with one actor doing it against themselves on a green screen and the timing feels always like a little off. That was pretty flawless in this episode. It was really good.
I forgot that was the same actor, and I have no such notes.
Well, I mean, this could also be an era where that is very costly to produce. So they could only do a little bit where it's him side by side with himself, whereas it's easier to shoot, one shot, but it's hard. It's easier to do that if one character is unconscious.
Yeah,
it's just reactions.
You have to do this very difficult process of not moving the tripod and then not passing your own frame.
The shot in the corridor where he's walking with himself, that must have been very difficult to choreograph because you have to match your own pace. What is that? That's bananas.
Incredible.
And do cross dialogue. Now, I know they're like kind of snippets at each other, but still, that was very impressive.
Yeah.
That's true. It was pretty awesome. Hey, I had this vision. What if they kept doing the loop over and over, and each time they opened up the shuttle, there were more
Picards.
It was like a clown car full of so many Picards, and they're like, wait, I figured it out this time.
That's a very Rick and Morty version.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I was kind of like, I wanted to see something like that though, Becca, of like, I want to see later in the episode us waking up from Picard's perspective and everybody trying to talk to him, but he can't fully understand because he's still in the quote unquote time warp, right? Like I want to see the struggle that the other guy goes through as opposed to us all just sitting here wondering what this grimacing man has in his brain.
Yeah, it's just incoherent until his internal time clock readjusts to where he should be, which is an interesting concept that we're also tied to this internal circadian rhythm.
It's something in sci-fi in general, when you have to deal with time shenanigans, you have to set the rules. And like, for instance, one of them in Doctor Who is like there's this set timeline and that certain events have to hit at certain times. And that's the same thing that we're seeing here of like, this is a set event and we have to hit this at a certain time or else the loop will continue, which is why I didn't mind so much that we didn't go over and over again, because I felt like this was the last time in a series of loops. We just didn't see the previous ones.
Yeah. I love time as a concept, and determinism, which this is the one timeline theory that
Right.
you cannot break it. It's all connected versus like a branching off of past, and all these things do
What
exist in different
is
universes.
the other option?
That's the thing.
Yeah.
They broke it. I guess that's the thing that always kind of bothers me about the unbreakable loop in a story is that the loop gets broken, therefore is not unbreakable. And there's
Well, this is a non-deterministic view of time.
Because
Go
they're
ahead
a
and-
catalyst.
Can you explain what that means?
Deterministic means anything that you see in the future that's going to happen has to happen. There's only one timeline. We essentially have no free will, which is super cool and terrifying. But
Terrifying.
also, I don't have any control over the next thing I'm going to say or whether I stumble over my words because there's only one timeline. So I don't need to worry about it. It is what it is.
Because
That's
the
determinism.
conditions of which you would be bombarded by to make what you were going to say in a second is going to cue you to do that anyway. And same like me responding to what you did, right?
Yeah. And just picture a straight line. If I time travel backward, then when I was going through the first time, I could have seen myself there because I exist in that point in time twice.
That's where the change comes in, because knowing is the catalyst of change in this time loop. The knowledge is the difference that breaks the loop.
Yes.
Because once you can be observed or observe the timeline, then it becomes something that you can change.
So by Picard like seeing himself and realizing what was going on, he became aware of
The last
loop
Picard.
itself and then change it.
If you're
And man,
interested in this, let me shout out a Hulu series, which I have mentioned before, called Devs. It is incredible.
Oh.
I think it's only 8 episodes, and it deals with this exact idea.
Oh, cool. Okay.
yeah, Devs is super fun. Highly recommend.
Yeah. But then there's also the other view of time travel, which is the Rick and Morty view, which is there is no one timeline because anything that happens creates an entirely new universe where the thing happened and it didn't happen, which I think is probably closer to what actually exists because of that quantum theory experiment where the particle both goes through the hole and doesn't go through the hole that we've talked about before.
Depends if it's being observed, right?
Right.
Yes,
well, that's Schrodinger's. Yeah.
Schrodinger's hole.
Schrodinger's hole.
No, not
The
Schrodinger's.
double slit experiment. And Schrodinger's hole.
You know
Get
who
it.
suddenly became a time-space scientist in this episode was Worf. In the conference room, he was the one who dropped the Mobius strip reference.
Right.
I was like, last episode, this guy was shoving through a wall, and now
Trying
he's
to.
talking about particle physics. What's going on?
Yeah. Some of it felt a little bit off. Some of the characterizations were just a little weird. And then, like we talked about how good Patrick Stewart was, I feel like they were looking for reactions or something from Pulaski, but instead they just kept cutting to a shot of her, and it was constant. I'm like, she's not really making a face.
Well, the two rooms we keep going back to are what's happening on the ship and then back to sick bay, which I just realized they should really call it med bay, not sick bay. We should have healthcare, not sick care in the world.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, and I noticed for the first time that Pulaski has beautiful, piercing blue eyes.
What?
And
She's
then
gorgeous.
And then she almost undermined the captain and said he is not coherent enough because there's two versions of him and it's making him very unstable. I might have to undermine him and declare him unfit to rule the ship. And she lost everything. Her eyes turned ugly to me.
Well, here's the thing. That felt like a little bit of Chekhov's regulation drop, because I was waiting for that to come into play at the end, and it never does.
No,
I think
Picard's like, I'm gonna walk off the ship, and Riker's like, what? He's like, bye. Like,
and then he kills a guy, and she's just like, oh, we'll do what he says.
No,
Yeah.
but she walks into the shuttle bay and she scans the other Picard to see if he's dead. And she doesn't say anything and she walks out. So basically she was like, oh, dude, you're a murderer and this is on me. And I don't even know what to say. Goodbye. Also, O'Brien's there?
O'Brien's there.
Is this a fever dream?
He has to watch it disappear.
yeah, we need someone there
Yeah.
to man the station. But like as Xander has mentioned before with Crusher, like the chief medical officer is the one person who can subvert the captain Well, I guess the commander could always belay orders or like relieve him of command, but it's the chief medical officer which can like make a determination about what is truly safe for the captain and the crew.
Fit for command, yeah.
Fit for command, yeah. So like she's the one person who gets to do that, and I think they want to do that to kind of raise the stakes of like, hey, if he goes off the reservation, we have to be careful. And then he still goes off the reservation.
Mhm.
He's like, no security in this place. I'm going down there by with myself, not by myself. With myself.
Yeah. By myself, with myself. So let's talk about the anomalies, which are the Picard from the future in 6 hours is not exactly himself. We find him unconscious, but he just looks like he's stuck in a very angry face. And we talked about how his internal clock is off and all of his like pulses and life signs are off slightly, but also the shuttlecraft he came back in is off, and they can't turn the power on or the reserve power until Geordi does something where he, I don't know, gets a USB-C cord instead of a USB cord.
That's basically it.
Yeah. He's like, this shouldn't work. Turn it to negative power, and it works.
Yeah.
It's very specifically opposite, right? Is like, don't do the other thing we're supposed to do. Like instead of positive 2%, negative 2%. And I don't know why that's true about coming back from time, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are probably a lot of different theories about it, but I wanted to mention about the shuttlecraft that's how we find this Picard, because that's pretty important. It really messes with our Picard's mental state that faced in some sort of crisis, he would abandon ship instead of go down with the Enterprise.
Well, Worf knows that's not true.
Right.
Because he's not that kind of captain.
Right.
But what's beautiful, spoilers right away, what we find is that the reason he wanted to leave the ship was to sacrifice himself. When it seemed that this weird wormhole that wasn't there and then appeared out of nowhere started sucking the ship downward, for lack of a better directional space.
Sure. Yeah.
Out of nowhere, no explanation, just is messing with them, and then is specifically sending bolts of blue lightning at Picard through the ship. And he thinks, okay, it wants me. I'll go out there and give it me as a sacrificial gesture, which is beautiful.
And not the right thing to do.
No.
Yeah. Like, I feel like that's what we could have honed in on more earlier on. If like we could have figured that out in some way, and therefore he has to deal with the torture of like thinking he's saving himself, but actually in truth he's saving the ship. Or
I forgot to mention that they do see a replay on the log from the shuttle that the Enterprise is destroyed.
Yeah, it just gets sideswiped by this wormhole and explodes.
And
It's very important.
The only one left.
That it went through the rainbow filter, though, too. So we had to see it all in a rainbow lens.
VV important. VV.
Like, I just wanted more of the problems of the time shenanigans as opposed to the mystery of it, because we understand we don't understand. Okay, I don't need to know that we don't understand for 30 minutes. I'd like to like deal with the repercussions of it, right? I'm going to make another movie recommendation, which I doubt either of you have seen this one. This is probably about 10 years old now. There's a movie called Time Crimes. You ever seen Time Crimes? It's a Spanish film.
It's called Minority Report.
Oh, I've seen it.
Time Crimes is great, and I'm not going to tell you anything about it.
Okay. It's so weird. What a weird recommendation, Jake.
I love this movie. It's a super good time travel shenanigan movie, and it kind of deals with what we're dealing with in this episode too.
Okay. It's a movie that's going to make you say, "What the fuck?"
I love these movies.
Why?
Yeah,
so many times.
Check it out.
But that's a deterministic timeline.
Yes, for sure. So
we've watched every time travel movie possible in this house.
Really? Yeah, I'm glad we're all time travel fans here. And I know we're going to get more of these in Star Trek, but like I feel like this one, that's why when I wrote you guys the email, I was like, I remember this one being good. And then when I watched it, I was kind of disappointed. And I don't know if that's because I raised my own expectations with that email, but like I felt like we just didn't get to play as much as we just set it up and then resolved it, especially the ending.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's this thing that we keep coming back to of no B plot line, and a lot of the episode was inactive, but also I thought that the tension when we start to figure out, and it stops just being a question mark, basically as soon as the tornado waterfall cloud appears, then we really feel Picard's inner drama of, okay, I know whatever I did that was my first instinct is not the right instinct, but what do I do? What would I have done? Did I know then that I was trying to avoid making the same choice that didn't work? And we're sitting there and it's like, well, what do? Do you try and run away, or do you stay still? Well, you probably would stay still and want to investigate. So run. Okay, wait, that doesn't work. So
Becca, what you're talking about is what I want to see. That's exactly the most interesting point. Like, take like Back to the Future 2. One of the most memorable scenes from that is when they're in Doc Brown's like condemned garage, and he pulls the chalkboard over. He's like, this is what's going on. And he shows the alternate timeline. He's like, this is where everything went wrong. And he lays it out for him about like how to change the past. Like, I kind of wanted to go through those motions.
Okay, but let me clarify that Back to the Future is the worst interpretation. Great movies, worst interpretation of time travel.
Sure.
In that, it's like diagramming a sentence where instead of either one timeline or a million timelines, well, infinite timelines, there's just like, this one took path 2, and there's just path 1 and path 2.
But it's the Rick and Morty scenario. No, but it is the Rick and Morty scenario that you mentioned earlier. It's an alternate timeline. They created, by giving Biff the almanac, they created an alternate timeline that they went to, a new universe.
Okay, but if you were to choose a different timeline, would you slowly start disappearing a little bit as you got further into a different
Of course.
dimension?
Yeah, no, I'm not saying the movie's perfect, but like that's a popularized version of a time travel movie that still has the same principle rules. But yeah, you're right. The fading thing's a little silly. But maybe that's them fading to their other dimension where their timeline is correct, right? Because Picard, the new Picard, comes back and his brain isn't in the right spot. Well, maybe in the Back to the Future interpretation is that they physically can't be in the same timeline, right?
Well, and he does vanish in
much the same way.
That's
a good point.
They do in Back to the Future.
Xander. Yeah.
But I think also this is a real challenge for the writers to present time shenanigans stuff, because you have the Star Trek audience, which comes with a certain understanding of time travel, balanced with the everyday audience that's just tuning in for like primetime TV. So there's this weird balance that they have to strike of dumbing it down enough for people to catch on to the story, but not enough that there's not a puzzle to solve as an audience member. So the pacing of it, I feel like, might be a little bit off, because if we were in real time watching this on a TV and maybe talking about our theories and try to get, solve it before the characters do, there might be something to that as well.
Right. That I like that much more. I do. Like, I want more options here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Let's talk about more what we do know about this tornado cloud. Deanna Troi is the first one to say it has some sort of consciousness, but it's instinct, not thought. And then when they are stuck in it, trying to move out with warp and then don't move, because it seems like the thing doesn't want them to move, they send out a probe. The probe is immediately obliterated, which I'm trying to wrap my head around what this cloud wants. Because if curiosity is its intention, why would it destroy the probe? Why wouldn't it just destroy the ship if that was its end goal? And ultimately, we're all like a rag in a dog's mouth.
Yeah.
Good catch. So who does this remind you of?
Q.
That baby face floating in the sky. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, him too.
The one that was going to Thanos half of their ship's population out of existence to study death.
A poor man's Q is what we call that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of Q, and guess what? The original version of this was a Q lead-in. So they originally I think the original script was going to lead into a future episode. I think they were going to leave it kind of somewhat unexplained, and then in a future Q episode, Picard would find himself in a shuttlecraft going through the vortex, and he'd realize that he was trapped in what had happened in previous episodes.
That would have been good.
Mm-hmm. But Roddenberry nixed it. Okay. And so it kind of made the ending not make sense. And like even the writer of this episode was like, so you just end it by flying into the center of the vortex? It doesn't make sense unless Q is pulling the strings, is what he says. So I kind of that kind of makes more sense now. Additionally,
there was no real resolution at the end.
No, I was mad that they didn't bring up Q in like a conference room, and I was like, why is nobody talking about this being Q?
And they brought up the Traveler, and they brought
Right.
up Mannheim, right? So like they
Right,
brought up
right.
that people had a lot of experiments, and they had reference for all these weird, I guess, shenanigans, quote
In the
unquote.
greater TNG universe characters.
But they didn't go down the Q route, which I feel like whenever anything happens, everybody needs to be like, okay, wait.
Q.
First off, is this a Q scenario?
Yeah.
Are we being cued right now?
Yeah.
I
There's
also
a really great line as Picard tries to run away with warp speed in the bridge, and then he realizes he needs to go get the other Picard now and let the other Picard do what he wants to do. And he says, as he's leaving the bridge, we may be on a road that has no turns. And I think that's a wonderful line if you believe in a deterministic universe.
Yeah.
yeah, a freeway with no off ramp.
Amen.
I also just noticed on the Memory Alpha entry for this episode that there was originally in the first draft a closing scene which calls back the omelets because as Xander mentioned, everybody disliked the omelets except for Worf, who was wolfing them down, right? Well, in this other scene, Riker invites Pulaski, LaForge, and Worf back to his quarters to make up for his omelet fiasco from the teaser and fixes them Alaska stew, which agrees with LaForge and Pulaski, but disgusts Worf, who would have preferred another omelet.
That's fun.
It's okay.
Alaska
Still
stew.
completely a non sequitur for the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
So then I click on the link for Alaska stew because, of course, Memory Alpha has its own entry for it. Alaska stew is a type of stew from Earth region, Alaska. In 2365, Riker cooked the stew for Worf, Pulaski, Geordi, and LaForge. The computer had to fabricate the ingredients, which included potatoes, onions, flour, and meat. An authentic Alaska stew had moose as its meat. However, Riker could not find the specific molecular pattern for moose meat. The meat fabricated, which was close to moose meat in Riker's opinion, was somewhat between the version venison from a musk ox and Kobe beef.
What? Where is this information coming from?
Pulaski said that the stew smelled better than the O1 omelets Riker cooked earlier, and LaForge would like the stew. Worf appreciated the effort, however, he preferred the omelets. I think someone got a hold of an early draft and probably transcribed that idea.
Because if it never happened in an episode,
no.
Okay.
You know how Memory Alpha is like
Sure.
they found every scrap of paper that came out of the production in a dumpster, and they're like, this is gospel.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. It is now canon. Well, I do want to talk a little bit more about this like sort of dead man walking scene as Picard follows Picard down the hallway, and the Picard from the future doesn't really recognize our Picard, and he's asking him, what was your other choice? And I guess sort of the must go forward for the cycle to end moral is go with the flow, just like if they hadn't resisted any of this, then there never would have been a problem. It was the instinct to resist.
But wasn't it Picard's action resisting the continuation of the timeline that stopped it?
My brain just exploded.
So there you go.
What if I just end the episode right there?
Okay, cool.
Now we get to talk about Alaska stew. And this is
What do you think of him killing himself? Is it murder? Is it morally corrupt for him to have vaporized his other self?
I think it's such a good story idea to have him do it, but it's so weird to have him make the choice within about a 15-second span. Like, especially when you have such a great actor like Patrick Stewart, it's like, let's have him realize this sooner and have us go through the tortured moment of him deciding that he's going to end another timeline's existence. And not only that, his own existence in another timeline. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it could just be that it was just a little too heavy for what they were going for. It was already a pretty heavy thing to deal with.
I mean, how is it? What's not heavy about it? He still shoots him. He still shoots him in vapor.
No, that's
like,
true.
He goes away.
Yeah.
It's still heavy, right?
Yeah, and it seems he wouldn't have needed to because he would have disappeared.
Right.
He could have knocked him out. And I guess we don't know for a fact that he's dead, but if he was just unconscious when Pulaski scanned him, then she would have taken him to sickbay again.
Then we'd have to watch this episode again.
Oh my God. Stop.
Yeah, it's just like if we have like a
Molasses
borderline Groundhog's Day /
Hmm.
Palm Springs kind of plot, like I kind of want to like live it just for a second. And I get like I appreciate what you said, Becca, that you loved the mystery of it. Like you were still kind of getting intrigued with them deciphering it. So that makes me feel better about my recommendation for it. But I still feel like they could have delivered a little bit more on moving it forward. I guess as much as you can in a time loop.
Look,
I agree.
We've encountered this a lot, and usually it comes down to budget.
Yeah.
yeah.
Something
Well,
got cut.
Yeah, and the fact that they can only redo it so many times, whether they're just hitting the same ground, and also probably I don't know if a B plot would have worked, but if like the B plot was the different omelet scenarios, I guess I can go without it. That's probably
enough of a B plot for me. I will take it. I would like an omelet through line.
That's it for Time Squared. Next week, we are visiting the Icarus Factor, where Riker is offered command of the starship Ares, but the man sent to brief him on the mission is his estranged father.
Dun, dun, dun. That's why we had the omelet thing.
Oh, Riker daddy. Oh, I bet he's a daddy.
I have a quick question about this. Didn't you say in the last episode that his mother abandoned him and he was alone with his father? I thought you guys had mentioned
That's what it
something about
was.
that.
Yeah.
Because that's how he learned how to cook the
Oh,
omelet.
yeah. So why is he a long lost father?
He's an estranged
strange.
father. Maybe he's estranged after he taught him how to cook the omelet. Like he was like, "Okay, you got the omelets, kid.
You
See
got
you
it.
never."
That's
Yeah.
all I
Very
can do.
much a boy named Sue scenario.
Yeah.
A boy
You got
named
your
Blue.
omelets. That's all I got for you. Well, I think we should
The way to end this, there's no turns on this road, Becca.
make it so.
Engaged. You took a turn.
We gotta stop. We can't do this podcast anymore. It's done. This was all determined in advance.